Thank you all for joining us. We are pleased to welcome you all to this important dialogue on addressing data gaps in the agriculture ecosystem. My name is Anne Waimiri, and I'm part of the Committee of Practice here at Strathmore Agri-Food Innovation Center. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Dennis Mujibi, to take over. Thank you. All the best.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to our inaugural webinar on unlocking data opportunities for private sector. This is the first of a series of webinars that is focused on the application of data for informed decision-making in the Kenya agricultural sector. We want to pay particular attention to the data needs of the private sector. The private sector plays a critical role in ensuring that markets work, bringing the critical sustainability in food systems and value creation in totality. Markets are powered by data. Alongside finance and commodity flows, ineffective data flows stifle the growth of markets and distort how value is shared along the value chain. Most of our value chains suffer from information disjunction, and only a few people have the critical information that is required to maximize value creation at each node of the value chain. The webinar today is about critically looking at ways at how we unlock data flows and the data channels that are needed for maximum efficiency in how we create value in the sector. And to help us in this discussion today, we have three speakers. We'll start off by painting the frame of how some of the data gaps are stifling decision-making. And James Newton, who is the Group Managing Director of UNGA PLC, will start us off. And then we will move to Emmanuel Macau, who is the Senior Regional Technology and Data Manager for Masiko AgriFin. And lastly, we will have Dr. Betty Morithi, who is a research fellow at the iLab Africa at Strathmore University. So we will have them help us look at this, and we will structure this to have this discussion in around 40 minutes so that we can have some 20 minutes or 15 minutes now, given the time, for us to have a question and answer session. So please take your notes, write your questions down if you have a question, when you have input, so that we will be able to discuss during the question and answer session. So without further ado, allow me to bring James Newton, Group Managing Director, UNGA Limited, to start us off. James, over to you.
Thank you and good morning. UNGA is 117 years old since 1908, as you can see there. So we have a long history and a very, very huge legacy as a business, coming way back from those earlier years as the oldest miller in the industry. So our journey is one of resilience over the years. I think in this space of food and agribusiness is not the easiest business to be in, but however, we have been able to come this far. In terms of our offering, yes, we are in human nutrition and animal nutrition, which includes animal health products, which are basically the minerals and supplements. A lot of people don't know that we also provide those particular products to our farmers. In terms of footprint, we are currently operating about 7 plants, 3 in Nairobi that are offering human nutrition, animal feeds, and fish feed as well. In Nakuru, that's where we have one of the animal feeds plants, as well as the minerals. In Eldoret, we are doing human nutrition, and we have a plant in Uganda where we have a joint venture with Nutreco, offering animal nutrition products in that market. Moving on quickly, in terms of the context, I think we can't overemphasize the importance of agriculture in the Kenyan economy. And as you can see, about 33% of the GDP is from agriculture, employing greater than 60% of the population, which is basically in the rural areas. So the subject for this morning, I think, is very, very timely and opportune, speaking about how we can leverage data to be self-sufficient as an economy when it comes to food production. And as we all know, a country that can't feed itself is not even secure in the first place. So in terms of us as a business, where do we apply our data? That is in supply chain and raw material data, from grain production to farmer profiles, import data, market and consumer data, looking at demand and supply chains, pricing, nutrition preferences, and consumer preferences that are quite evolving over time. Production and operations, that's internal in terms of efficiency, how we are operating our machinery, quality assurance, traceability, and the like. And of course, financial and commercial data, agricultural and environmental data in terms of weather, etc. And we shall speak more about this shortly. And then we have policy and regulatory data on food safety standards and trade policies, including the revenue authorities. So in terms of challenges around data gaps, and when we talk about data gaps, is just the difference between the data that for us as a business or even the industry would need to be able to make effective decisions for efficiency in the agri ecosystem. The first one is on just the fragmentation. There is no really proper coordination between input suppliers, processors, buyers, financiers. Each collect data, which is not harmonized. There is no congruence in terms of harmonizing this data so that we have one source of truth. Trust deficit. I think given the competitive nature of this industry, we find that different players are not willing to freely share their data. And I think as SAFIC, it's one area that Strathmore you are trying to address and getting players to come together and share certain data that will help this industry grow. Capacity gaps. Many agribusinesses actually lack the tools and even the talent to be able to collect data and also convert that data into a form that can be consumed for decision making. There is policy ambiguity when it comes to things like the Data Protection Act, which is new, recently enacted about 6 years ago, which provides a baseline, but it's not very specific when it comes to agricultural data, what should be shared, what is protected, and what can be availed publicly for consumption. There's infrastructure limitations. As you know, in today's digital age, rural connectivity and digital adoption, I think it's getting better, but we are definitely not there yet. I believe we have quite some opportunity there when it comes to especially smartphones that ordinarily would be used for collection of data. And then the soil and weather data patterns. I think we've seen a lot of changes, unlike in the past where we knew that would have the long rains between March and April, short rains in September. And you know, today's situation is a perfect example where the short rains have not even started in earnest, at least in this part of the country where we are in Nairobi. But of course, it might be a bit different in other areas. So just the patterns, the way they are changing, and how is that data available to everyone so that they can make decisions accordingly. And then looking at the market opportunities. Before I talk about intelligence access, where I want to spend a few minutes, we see a lot of access to finance being a challenge to farmers. I think farmers, especially the small-scale farmers, Smallholders are not well banked, and that's because of the informal nature of the transactions. So when it comes to credit scoring, crop insurance, these are areas for improvement. We see very, very low uptake for some of these products that are available there to support the farmers. Public-private partnerships, I think in this area, of course, we can do better. We are beginning to see a bit of traction in this space, players coming together between the government supporting players, supporting farmers. We are seeing instances where now the government is releasing some of its land for commercial farming, and we have examples including the Galana Kulalus of this world, the Tana Belt, the Masinga farms, and those are good steps forward in the agri-space. Technology, in integration. Again, just the adoption of the current technological trends of AI, blockchain, satellite imagery, drones to survey, for example, farms, spraying, etc., which actually should be very targeted as opposed to what we see now, which is a wholesome application of solutions which are not perhaps even effective when it comes to field stuff. Export competitiveness, data-backed quality assurance would really strengthen compliance, global standards. I think currently there's a lot of talk about infiltration of adulterated products coming to the country, and not just international, even across regional borders in the East African market, and basically because we have a deficit when it comes to provision of agri products. So moving back to market intelligence, I believe Dr. Mujibi, this is one area that I think if we can solve some of these problems that we are seeing here, we'll be making progress as a country. In terms of demand forecasting, looking at the requirements vis-a-vis what we are able to produce. Market intelligence, targeted farming. If market data, for example, for us like millers, if farmers knew exactly what we need, they knew what standards they should produce, they have this data from KEDS, for example, as a regulator, it would be much, much more better than what is currently. And by the way, this is hindering farmer support as well. We have certain areas in this country that can produce some of the products that we use, but farmers don't know that there is a market for it, for things like soya. I don't believe that data is out there and farmers know exactly what's the size of the opportunity in the country. We also see that wastage would be reduced, especially when farmers are producing crops that don't have a ready market because of timing issues or because of the intelligence that I spoke about. That would reduce waste, where farmers are targeting certain products that they are producing to end up in certain markets. That would optimize their pricing as well. Planning for deficit, even at country level. And I've given an example there of maize, which is a staple in this country. You find that it's said that Kenya produces 2 million metric tons of maize, while the demand is 3 million metric tons. I think this is information that's out there, but who really counts how many farmers are producing maize? What's their acreage? What's their currently the talk is very speculative. People will come and tell me, oh, this year the harvest will be very good. We are seeing a good crop, but there is no data. It's just a feel, is what you are seeing, and you haven't seen all the farmers. You've only seen perhaps a few, and this is one area where I believe would help us in proper planning. Would be able to go to the policymakers and say, this year the deficit is not 1 million metric tons. The deficit is 2 million metric tons. So let's start early and plan for importation of whatever grain it is, in this case maize, and bridge that gap. A lot of times we are firefighting. We run when it's too late. The pain is already being felt in the country. So I believe this area, I know it's a big bucket of information, but this is one area perhaps if we solve this problem and brought visibility to the fore, I think would be making a lot of progress as a country. So I wish to stop there. Thank you very much for listening to me. Back to you, Dr. Mujibi. Apologies, I've overrun my 10 minutes a bit.
Oh, thank you, James, so much. That is very illuminating. And it was important for you to spend the time so that you can paint for us the picture as it is, because those pain points are the ones we want to discuss. How do we unlock some of those pain points that you are facing as industry? And two things came out very clearly: the fragmentation in the ecosystem, where nobody's talking to the other. So input suppliers, processors are not exchanging information, so that the information flows are not as smooth as they could be. And then you've talked about big gaps where information is actually not flowing. The market intelligence, you've said, where farmers are not getting the signals from the market where the opportunities lie. You've said that there are opportunities, but the production is not demand driven per se. And then we've talked about, planning using anecdotal data, what people, the gut feel, or, not data driven, in the sense that we don't have solid data that you can present in front of policymakers and say, this is a situation and we want to plan around it. And those are the kind of discussions we want to basically dig deep into and see how we can solve for those use cases. So next, to give us an idea of how do you begin to close some of those data gaps, I would like to call Dr. Betsy so that she can come and tell us, because collecting data is an expensive exercise. How do you begin to acquire some of that data without breaking the bank? Betsy, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Mujibi. Let me just pull up my slides.
Go ahead.
All right. So I don't think I need to reiterate. Climate change has been stated that it's leading to a lot of unpredictable weather patterns, in addition to more frequent severe weather events, which make it difficult for farmers to know when to plant, what to plant for certain weather conditions. And so it's predicted by 2080, Kenya in particular will have a projected decline of 15%. And that's no feat in terms of our food security, right? And a lot of food is supported by smallholder farmers, so that also has implications on their productivity and profitability. And the previous speaker has also talked about weather and the lack of weather data. What the map is showing is for the countries that are most affected by weather disaster, they don't spend a lot on weather and climate information services. So this is looking at weather infrastructure by the meteorological departments, whether it's a big radar or satellite. So what we find is a 7-day forecast in a rich country can be more accurate than a 1-day forecast in some of low-income ones. And to add on to that is that 50% of radar stations in Africa do not produce accurate data to even predict hourly or even daily weather. So we have a huge gap that exacerbates the issues with climate change. And so we end up with an issue where smallholder farmers do not use weather information, and if they use it, they have access to very non-specific weather data. And so for farmers, how much do they lose to seasons due to poor timing, wrong planting dates, too much or too little water? How many times have they applied fertilizer just before heavy rains for it to be washed away? And how many times have they bought expensive pesticides just in case, instead of knowing when exactly to use them? So we end up with over 70% of smallholder farmers lacking access to localized and actionable weather and climate information services, in addition to gender disparities around access and use. So what is the solution for this? So precision farming is a technology or a tool that means that instead of making farming decisions on guesswork, you're using data collected by different devices. So you have drones, you have IoT weather stations, you have soil that measure weather, soil that can then be used to drive data-driven decisions, right? And so it can mitigate climate variability by employing site-specific technologies to be able to optimize resource use, increase crop resilience, and reduce waste. And so you're able, as a farmer, to apply precise amount of water, fertilizer, and pesticides only when they are needed. However, implementing this type of solution for small-scale producers is difficult. Number one, because most precision agriculture is designed for 100-hectare large farms, and a typical Kenyan smallholder farmers farms between 0.5 to 2 hectares. So the technology doesn't scale down easily because it can be quite expensive to scale it down. And then we also have lack of investments in this type of data infrastructure, setting up this infrastructure, sparse sensor networks within the country to support the sensors, whether it's on GSM or LoRa, and lack of data interoperability. And lastly, the technology is only as good as the support in terms of the extension service gap. So farmers not knowing how to interpret the data, and also lack of associated access to associated services, such as getting good farm inputs, such as fertilizers and seeds, as well as downstream market integration. So once they have this abundant supply, where do they take it? And so bridging these gaps requires partnerships between public, private, and community actors. And so we at iLab Africa, we tried to come up with a solution that can be scaled down to the smallholder farmer level, and we're calling it Imarika. So Imarika is a community weather monitoring system where we deploy low-cost devices. In this instance, our use case is on weather. So we deploy low-cost weather stations across a community. And to deal with the connectivity, we also look at long-range wide area networks. That is a private server, private network that can afford us real-time connectivity, especially in rural areas where you don't have good network connectivity. The important thing here is shared infrastructure. So farmers don't need to purchase individual equipment. They benefit from this shared local network. That makes it affordable, and you can bundle these services to different advisory services as well. So in this use case, for this pilot, we were able to pilot 2 LoRaWAN gateways in Busia County, one in Nambale and one in Butla sub-counties. And we have our own private LoRaWAN network where our weather station communicates. Why we did this, Busia being a border town, the GSM network, whether it's Safaricom or Airtel, tends to be very poor. And therefore, if you deploy weather stations or any other IoT sensor devices, they're not able to transmit data accurately over the usual GSM networks. And so we needed our own sort of private long-range wide area network that's able to serve our community. So what were we able to achieve? So we had one goal in mind: to close the critical data gaps that limit innovation in smallholder agriculture. So at its core, it's a community-driven weather and environmental monitoring system. As you can see, the blue dots with the cloud are our weather stations, and then the circles show the coverage of our private LoRaWAN network. And so yeah, we were able to get a coverage of about 20 kilometers. And so you can imagine the number of smallholder farmers who live within that 20 kilometers being able to access the data and the devices, and this can be bundled on. So we can build on this beyond weather. Can we add soil sensors? Can we look at different things around pest detection and all that? And so at its core, again, community-driven environmental monitoring system using low-cost IoT sensors and LoRaWAN connectivity to collect hyper-local climate at the moment, but can be expanded directly from the farm. But beyond serving farmers directly, it's built as a shared data infrastructure. So the data it generates, whether it's rainfall, temperature, humidity, soil moisture, can become a foundational layer that private sector actors can tap into. So you can think of the possibilities. Insurance companies, for example, can build weather index products that are tailored to specific microclimates. Fintechs and agri-lenders can use this real-time environmental data for more accurate risk profiling and credit scoring for farmers. Input suppliers can focus demand and design more targeted distribution strategies, as well as innovators can now bring in more AI models and local data sets to deliver smarter advisory tools. And so, like I said, weather is not the only thing. Information needs for smallholder farmers are wide. So they need to know about market and sales, planning and preparation. What should I grow? When should I maximize yield? What is the market demand? And so when we talk about unlocking data gaps, we need to remember that their information needs extend far and beyond, and they require actionable insights on soil health, pest disease, demand, market prices, financial services, and more. So what this means is that no single organization can address all these needs alone. Instead, we might think of the data we generate as an infrastructure that other providers can build upon, okay? And the example I gave, for example, insurance can use the climate and yield data to design weather index products, which financial institutions can create credit scoring models, and etc. So finally, unlocking agricultural data gaps using low-cost and IoT monitoring. We've shown that we can scale down these devices using cheaper sensors and LoRa sensor networks for microclimates. And we can do this AI integration by offering more tailored agroeconomic advice, pest and disease monitoring for predictive crop and livestock health models, feed optimization that can then be disseminated to farmers through digital agricultural tools. Thank you. I hope I kept to the 10 minutes.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Betsy. That was awesome. Showing that when we think about data gaps, we should also think about the data as an infrastructure, basically building that foundation that other people can build on top of. And you've stressed very much the need for collaborating, because the needs of a farmer are multiple and many people need to collaborate so that we all can actually meet those needs of the farmer. Thank you very much for that insightful presentation. Now, the kind of data that iLab Africa will then collect using the LoRa network and those IoT sensors needs then to be packaged, because it generates data. That data must be packaged into information, the market intelligence that James was speaking about. Somebody needs to put that information in a way that it is easily digestible to the farmer and easily digestible to the agent, because most of these systems are not just targeting the farmer. There are multiple agents that are farmer facing that also will be needing to consume that data, utilize that data to build products. And so our next speaker is going to talk about how you begin to build a system collaboratively that uses the data that have been harvested and transforms it into intelligence. Allow me to welcome Emmanuel Macau, who is the Senior Regional Technology and Data Manager at Masico Agri-Food.
Okay, thank you very much. We heard quite a lot from James and Dr. Betsy. Thank you very much for setting that context. I'll just talk briefly about what we do here at Masico. We are a humanitarian organization, but we run a program called Masico Agri-Food, which represents over $50 million in innovation funding in the last 10 years, coming from different donors. Our vision is to have every smallholder farmer prospering from an interconnected digital world. So everything that we do has a digital component to it, and we try and make it as usable, or even work with the partners that we're working with to make it as usable as possible, and farmer friendly, and has some impact and provides resilience to them. We are in 9 countries, 8 in Africa and 1 in India itself. And so far we've served over 16 million farmers all across those 9 countries. So just to tie in what Dr. Betsy was talking about when it comes to collecting information. So when we started off Masiko Agri-Food, we actually were not developing any solutions. We were more supporting tech innovators, large organizations like financial institutions and mobile operators who are developing ag-tech solutions that are targeted towards smallholder farmers to give them access to digital solutions. But there was a gap somewhere where we saw that there was need for content and advisory information, and a lot of ag techs and organizations were not able to spend or even get resources to develop these solutions. So we did develop a platform called Sprout, which is an open content platform for agricultural information. And what happens is, on one side, we have the expert advisory content that comes from the likes of Calvo, Kabi, ILRI, many other organizations that are actually research organizations that have a lot of information. They're mandated to, share this information, and it has to reach the smallholder farmer. But to some extent, it never really does reach the farmer. And if it does, it's expensive also for the farmer. On the other end, we have the farmer-facing organizations that are working with the farmers, the ag-techs, the innovators, who linked to these farmers directly, but they need this content or this advisory information to be able to get it to the farmer so that they can make the right decisions at the right time and get the best agronomic advice. So, and hence Sprout was born. And right now, what we've done is actually been able to provide different types of services, which I'll talk about just now, and also have now connections and links with other organizations now, like SAFIC, of course, with their weather advisory, with their weather stations, where I would see them ingesting some of that information to continue developing and enhancing some of the products that we are offering from Sprout, such as smart agricultural advisory information, where you have satellite information and weather information linked with agronomy advisory information that would actually now go to a farmer who, depending on the value chain that they have and the location that they have, they would get specific agronomy information for them to have targeted and specific actions within a specific amount of time. So here we have now a situation where organizations are sharing data. We are getting data on from different organizations, and they share this data with us, and we do some data analytics and also link that data to come up with comprehensive information that can be shared to a farmer or can be given to a farmer at minimal to zero cost. And the farmer actually, they will not be paying. Right now, Sprout is free. And at the moment, we are also piloting an AI advisory chatbot. We're just in the prototype stage, where we are actually trying to be able to make this chatbot available to farmers. They can get into the Sprout WhatsApp platform or web, the Sprout webpage. They'll be able to ask questions based on the value chain that they are practicing in, and then also choose the kind of language that they are comfortable speaking. We've not done Kiswahili yet, and then the chatbot will now figure out how to respond to their queries and also collect information from the farmer-facing organizations. But for us to be able to do this, I think it's also important for us to think about how do we, think about data. And I think James has talked about the challenges. He's talked about the opportunities. But from Masico Agri-Food, we're looking at it from a broader perspective, where we have, for us to, we will come up with a situation, a solution like a Sprout. We need to actually think about what kind of data do we need, what are the use cases that we're looking at, and how do we actually implement this. But we've also come to think of it as the partners that we actually work with also have similar challenges. They have collected data, but they also don't know what to do with the data. So again, just very quickly, just going through just some of those challenges and opportunities, just as James has also talked about very broadly. For us, the opportunities are farmers are productivity is improved. We improve optimization of sourcing and service delivery by SMEs and other businesses. Financial institutions are able to de-risk lending because now actually we know that financial institutions usually don't have as much information or transactional information about farmers who are not even banked. And so there's need to have a bit more data, alternative data that can be collected from various sources. And some of these agtechs can work with, say, mobile operators or financial institutions to provide additional alternative data that can be predictive enough to allow for a financial institution to lend out to a farmer. And of course, some of the challenges is now we're seeing a lot of agtechs collecting data. There's duplication. There's a lot of resource. Hold on a bit. Let me just reduce this. Yeah, there's resource wastage because now everybody is trying to do the same thing, go to the same farmer using the same amount of money or more to try to get the same amount of data, while we can actually collaborate and put this data together. We don't have to go back to the same people and ask for the same thing. We have limited interoperability, poor data quality, farmer fatigue, again, multiple people asking for the same information, and then unclear data governance. So the impacts, again, just not to emphasize, I just want to.
Emmanuel, just to, you have an additional around a half minutes left.
Okay, yeah. So just to skip over the data gaps, I want to talk about the use cases, the data use cases. Different use cases were identified, and we need to think about what our use cases are before we start thinking of what kind of data is required. So they vary from digital financial services, digital information, digital markets, and logistics. And you need to have access, you need to assess the data that you have to be able to determine where you are in your data sharing. If you're ready to share data, how do you know that you're ready to share data? Do you have data? How do you manage your data? What kind of processes do you have? Do you have the kind of human resources that are required? And if you answer those questions, then what does it mean to be in partnership? So you need to catalog your data, prioritize the use cases, leadership buy-in, and all that. And then you have to implement and think about how your implementation will look like. And for you to be successful in implementation, you need to, have clear use cases, like I've just mentioned. You need to have transparent governance, interoperability, sustainable business models, and a stakeholder engagement. I think that's what the COP is all about right now. And finally, what I would say is something that we should do right now if we are to even develop the kind of solutions and come up with a way to cooperate is, for policymakers, is create an enabling environment. And so we have the Data Act, of course, and we have the AI strategy that came out just recently, and so many other policies that are enabling the environment. And then developing governance frameworks, invest in digital infrastructure in rural areas. I've seen what Dr. Betsy was talking about with using mobile network connectivity, and still a few more challenges in that infrastructure. private sector, it's explore data partnerships. We're seeing UNGA now using some of the data that they're getting from working with Strathmore. And so that's one partnership that is really creating value for themselves and for the environment. And then adopt interoperable standards and sustainable business models. And finally, from development partners and maybe even other institutions, is support capacity building, fund digital public goods, and facilitate multi-stakeholder partnerships. Okay, thanks. I hope I've kept that 1 minute. All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emmanuel, for your contribution here. Very insightful. Several things coming through. Data as an infrastructure, as the core of the information and the knowledge that we need to fill our gaps is needed. You've talked about use cases. Use cases are really the questions we are trying to answer, the things we are solving for. So from fertilizer optimization, yield optimization, credit scoring, weather prediction, those are the use cases which data will be put to, and some of them market related, like James talked about. And then we've said targets. We've spoken a little bit more about farmers, but we realize that there are more targets that will require this data than just farmers. We're talking about people who are playing different functions in the value chain. And so all these needs are quite a lot. And what is emerging very clearly is that the data that is needed to solve for private sector requirements cannot come from one entity. This must be data that is co-created by different entities. Different entities must share data, okay? So that we are able to solve this conundrum of data gaps. And so very quickly, the Strathmore Agri-Food Innovation Center is looking at this problem and saying, we know that some data exists, a good amount of data exists, and it is in people's businesses, offices, computers. How can you bring people to share the information they have so that we solve for these problems? And that's why we've come up with what we are calling the agri-markets data for investment and growth community of practice. In short, we are calling it AMDIG. The community of practice is proposing a mechanism through which private sector actors, the government, and all support networks within the agriculture ecosystem can come together to share the data that is needed so that we can solve these intractable problems. And we've designed it as a co-creation platform that has a steering committee, okay, that oversees the activities of the community of practice, which includes actors, respected actors from the ecosystem, people in government, people in private sector, people in philanthropic organizations. And then there's a secretariat. The secretariat that day-to-day communication and planning is based here at the Strathmore Agri-Food Innovation Center, but to advise in terms of decision-making, the steering committee is the top organ. And then you've got the direct advisory committee that provides support and vision and direction, right, onto what are the things to focus on. And within that, we've got 3 thematic areas, okay? The 3 thematic areas where below the thematic areas, we have working groups that deal with specific tasks that are rather long-term, that require co-creation and collaboration to solve. And then you have short-term task forces, right? So when you look at the 3 thematic areas that we have a thematic area that is thinking about how do we collect the data we need. Who has data now? What can we use that data for? What are the gaps? And if we want to analyze data, what are the methods we can use? And then we have a specific working group looking at how do you bring private sector market data into the cohort, into the pot, because without the market and data, you cannot be able to solve for this. We need that market signal to be a pool for all the other data that we will require to to give the different actors, the different targets, the solutions they require. We said the needs of farmers, for example, as a target, are very multifaceted. And you need various types of data from different kinds of organizations to be able to put together a coherent solution that is personalized and responds to the very needs of the farmer. So that is one thematic area. The second thematic area is about looking at where government goes, what government has planned, and aligning, supporting government to actually have decision-based decisions that are based on evidence and data, right? We would like government to look at the private sector, to talk to the private sector, to use evidence to make some of the policy planning and the policy decisions that they take, so that you're not importing maize when farmers have the maize, or you're not providing a restrictive environment that stifles the private sector. So a very collaborative thing, aligning with what government has planned, but most importantly, looking at the county and the regional blocks and say, what are the needs of the counties? What are the needs of the regional blocks? What are some of the data requirements they have at that lower level that can improve planning and extension service provision? Because in any case, agriculture is a devolved function. And then lastly, we have a pillar dedicated on unlocking the private sector play in the value chains. How do we ensure that the value chains are well governed and well coordinated to ensure that value is properly created, that the commodity flows, information flows, financial flows in the value chains are taken care of? That is what the community of practice at Strathmore is looking like. And to assist in this subject of unblocking the data gaps, we have a few products that we think the private sector can tap into to begin to unlock this. We have built this chatbot, right, that we are using called Kilimo AI, that can be used to very specific to the Kenyan context. And at some other point, if you go to the SAFIC website, you'll get access to the Kilimo AI chatbot. We have a data sharing platform that allows organizations to share data with each other directly, maintaining privacy, anonymizing sensitive data, and using a very well curated data governance framework to allow sharing without risking the business models or some of the things that are critical to a business from being exposed. So there's a data platform that promotes interoperability, follows what we call the FAIR principles. Data is easy to find. Data is standardized in a way that if you were to get it as an organization, you can easily apply it, right, to your needs. And then we also have things like gross margin calculators that farmers can use to see whether what they're doing responds to the market and whether they'll make money. They're not just farming blindly for the sake of farming. And our call today, and the reason for this webinar, is to say we need to collaborate. We need to start working together as a team so that we can solve these data gap issues that are bedeviling the ecosystem. I know we are almost out of time, but I would like to give an opportunity for one or two questions, clarifying questions, and please type your questions in the Q&A and put your name so that in case we are out of time, we are not able to respond to your questions, we'll reach out to you with some of the responses out of this. So over to the audience. If you have some questions that you want to vocalize, put your hand up. We will call you out, and then you can also just write in the Q&A place. So I can see already Professor Ruth Kiraka, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. You can hear me clearly? All right.
Yes, Prof, go ahead.
So I have two quick questions. One is on the investment. As you rightly said, there's a lot of fragmentation in terms of who is collecting data, where is the data being collected, how is it being stored, how is it being shared, where is the investment to sustain this whole initiative, like even what the SAFIC is doing, to ensure that the platforms that you've created now are going to be available to farmers in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. Because sometimes you see these good initiatives, but as funding becomes a challenge, the data is not updated frequently. So how do you ensure the ongoing investment? And two, because of the fragmentation of how data is collected, how do you ensure that data is collected in a way that it is comparable and that it is possible to analyze? So we're not using different metrics, different measures, that you find data from one county is not comparable from data from another county because it was collected using different metrics and measured in different ways. So how do you ensure consistency in data collection to enable analysis and therefore decision making? And then the investment? How do you support investment in this area to ensure that these platforms continue to be available to farmers? Thanks.
Thank you, Prof. So one of the things that the Strathmore Agri-Food Innovation Center is very cognizant of is sustainability of any initiative that you're putting together. So the beauty of using the community of practice is that brings together all sort of following a triple helix approach of private sector, government, and academia, is to ensure that sustainability is built into the design. So one of the things that we are careful about is when we get together the community of practice, one of the things we'll be discussing is how do we sustain this beyond using donor funding? Can we have a business model underlying the community of practice that ensures its long-term sustainability? So there's already a sustainability strategy that has been developed for the community of practice, and this seeks to ensure that within 3 to 5 years, there is an income stream that sustains the community of practice. The second thing is that as part of the governance documents, we have a standardization strategy to ensure that we follow the FAIR principles, that data collection follows a set of practice that is acceptable, that is scientific, that it's usable such that even the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics can accept that data to be used in the national statistic. So we've put together structures to ensure that data is comparable across the organization. And once people join the community of practice, then they have access to these standards that they can apply in the organizations. I see we've come to the top of the hour. Please, we really want to hear from you. So we request humbly that you type your questions in the Q&A, and we will definitely reach out with responses to any questions you put in there. And we also encourage you to reach out to us, right? safic@strathmore.edu, so that we can begin this process of co-creating, of collaborating, of bringing the whole ecosystem together. When we share, we go further. Like somebody said, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go further, work with others. So we want to work with others. So please put your questions. And thank you for our panelists for that very insightful contribution. And all the participants, thank you for coming. See you next month when we have a very more interesting discussion coming up. Bye for now.